back to another edition of Crafting and Crime Daily, the show where I, Rebecca, aka Crafting Journey, recap live trials. The first one I am doing is the Ice Cream Man murders case. Yeah, that's Michael Keatley. He's on trial for the murders of Juan and Sergio Guitron and the injury of four other people. So yeah, there's that. And I'm also covering the trial of Lucy Letby. Now, I do that in separate episodes on Saturday. So the Saturday edition I'll be talking about the Lucy Letby trial that's going on over in the UK. You can check out those on my channel. Everything I do is playlisted. So just, if you want to watch the Ice Cream Man murders, just click Michael Keatley, Ice Cream Man, and you'll see all the videos where I talk about that trial. So, yes, I'm bringing back Murdaugh Monday because you thought it was over. That lady hasn't sang yet. Nope. I did sing over the weekend. Happy birthday to some friends, but not over. The murder trial is over, and Alex Murdaugh was convicted of killing his wife. My bunnies are crooked. I know that's what she said, right? Okay. So Alex Murdaugh was convicted of killing his wife Maggie and his son Paul. However, he's also been facing 99 other charges of financial crimes. So first we're going to talk about the Mozelle property. Now don't worry, I am going to cover what happened in the Ice Cream Man murders case Thursday and Friday. And if you want to skip forward to that, I have everything time stamped down below, and you can just skip the Murdaugh stuff and go right to the Ice Cream Man. Technology is wonderful. Okay, so the Mozelle property it's been sold, guys. Somebody bought it. I remember we were joking about, would you buy it? How much would how much would somebody have to pay you to live there? Are the kennels haunted? I said I would live there. If you give me the property or pay me to live on it, I would live there. But the kennels would be gone. I would just level the kennels and build a she shed that Maggie could haunt with, come on in, Maggie, the ghost of Maggie. All right, in honor of Maggie Murdaugh, a she shed. So the Mozelle property sold for $3.7 million. But where is that money going? That's what you want to know, right? I have the answer. So that was the sale price, $3.7 million. So John Marvin, which is Alex Murdaugh's brother, John Marvin Murdaugh, he gets $290,000 to pay for the estate's legal fees because, he had to hire lawyers to settle Maggie, because Maggie owned the estate, to settle the estate. Well, I don't know if the entire estate has been settled, but the Mozelle property, which is part of that estate, has been sold. So $290,000 to pay legal fees for that, $6,511.52 to Laura Jones LLC. She's she's a creditor that had a lien on or a claim against Maggie's estate. But I wanted to look this up. Who's Laura Jones? What's this Laura Jones LLC? And why do they owe her money? Maggie owes her money. It's an interior design company that's in South Carolina. So, yeah. Maggie didn't pay her bill for the interior design of one of her properties. Edisto was being remodeled at the time of the murders, as you recall. Then Buster Murdaugh, Alex's son, he gets $530,000. Now, why so little out of $3.7 million? Because in the case of Mallory Beach, he settled his portion of that. Let me back up here. He was being sued by Mark Tinsley in the Mallory Beach case. The death of Mallory Beach, because as you recall, Buster Murdaugh gave his driver's license to his brother Paul, and all these kids went drinking that night with the beer that Paul purchased. So Buster was named as a defendant. So in a settlement that was reached, he gave up a large portion of his entitlement to the proceeds of the Mozelle property. So Yeah. $25,000 went to Palmetto State Bank for a claim that they had against the property. The receivership for Alex Murdaugh. So the judge in all these financial crimes, or one of these, I don't know who did it, but one of the judges, some judge, set up a receivership and appointed receivers. And these are independent people that are searching for the money. And they're pooling all the money together to pay all of Alex's victims. And $275,000 of this sale went into that fund. The remaining funds, which I estimate to be $2 million, $2 million that's left, goes to Mark Tensley to pay on the claims of Mallory Beach, the girl that died in the boat crash the night that the kids all got drunk, Miley Altman, and Morgan Dowdy. Now, Morgan Dowdy and Miley Altman were two other girls that were in the boat. There were 3 girls, 3 boys. One of those, I don't know if it was Miley or Morgan, was at the time Paul's girlfriend. I don't know which one. And he was slapping her around and they were fighting. And I also skipped over one. $100,000 goes to Connor Cook, the attorney for Connor Cook, to settle his claim. Connor was suing as well. He's another boat crash victim. So huge loss for him. Yeah. Anyway, back to more stuff on. I'm sorry, guys. I'm in a lot of pain today, so you're gonna have to excuse the brain farts. My back. I think I mentioned it yesterday in the live. I've strained my back, and my brother said, "Oh, she just ended the live to go play Minecraft." No, I ended the live because my back was killing me. But then I still sat here diamond painted for a couple of hours. But I'm taking some Flexeril and Tylenol, and that seems to quiet it down a bit. So it just constant spasms in my back. Anyway, so that's my excuse for today. All right, so let's talk about Russell Laffitte. Now, Russell Laffitte, he was charged last year in connection with Alex Murdaugh's financial crimes. He was charged in federal court. He's the former CEO, Chief Executive Officer of Palmetto State Bank. Now, as you recall, he was set up by Alex as the personal representative for 6 of Alex's clients. And the allegations were that in connection with these 6 clients, he stole $392,000. Russell Laffitte did. $292,000, and he spent it on personal expenses. So he was tried last year in December for bank fraud and wire fraud and misapplication of bank funds, and he was found guilty on all counts after a jury deliberated for 11 hours, and they had to excuse 2 of those juries just to get the deliberations done because I'd go into it, but it would take me 10 more minutes to explain the drama that went on with those jurors. It was in federal court, and federal court does not have cameras, which is why we didn't cover it live here on the channel. But after he was convicted, Russell Laffitte filed a motion for retrial based on what occurred with the jurors, the drama that went on with the jurors. That motion was denied. And meanwhile, in the background, even behind these motions, he's convicted in December. In January, he gets a new set of attorneys to help him with his appeals. In March, those sets of attorneys withdrew from the case because Russell wasn't paying them. Now he's got a new set of lawyers that filed a second motion for a new trial based on Alex Murdaugh's testimony on February 23rd in the murder trial. Alex actually said that if Russell Laffitte did it, he did it without knowing. So on the stand, Alex Murdaugh said he took full responsibility for Russell Laffitte's actions. He says if Russell did anything wrong, he didn't know he was doing something wrong, which I beg to differ. He knew. He knew. You don't just get all that money for free. So, but it's interesting because Russell is filing a motion for a new trial. Now, here's the thing I would ask as a judge. First of all, was Alex Murdaugh on your witness list? Why didn't you call him? Nobody called Alex Murdaugh during this trial. He did not testify. You could have had Alex Murdaugh come in and testify. Now, if Alex Murdaugh happens to be on the witness list that was filed in that case, in that trial, he's going to lose this motion because he could have called Alex Murdaugh. Now, if Alex wasn't on the witness list, then maybe you still got to question, why didn't you call him? Yeah. If your client had no knowledge of this and it was all Alex, you should have called Alex Murdaugh to trial. Although Alex would have just sat on the stand and claimed the Fifth Amendment, I have the right to remain silent, I don't have to incriminate myself on the stand. Although he incriminated himself in the murder trial very badly. So anyway, that's your Murdaugh Monday. Let's get to the Ice Cream Man murders. So we're going to go talk about day 8 and day 9 of the testimony in the Ice Cream Man murders. Now, oh gosh, all these Hispanic names. I'm going to get them all confused, and I apologize. Detective Lugo, who is now Lieutenant Lugo, but at the time he was in the detective division. He was actually fairly new to being a detective at the time, and they were assigned the lead on, randomly. They took turns being lead detective on cases. So this case was assigned to him. And that year, he thinks he might have been lead on about 14 cases. So he is walked through his investigation by the prosecution. And it's kind of cut and dry. It's stuff that we already know. He arrived at the scene of the murders about 4:30ish in the morning. Now, the murders are thought to have occurred at 2:22 a.m. or right before 2:22 a.m. because 911 was called at 2:22 a.m. So I'm going to kind of combine the prosecution and the defense's questions and to kind of make this sort of a story for you guys. But the afternoon of the 25th, around 4:30 in the afternoon, so about 12 hours after the murders, Jose Rodriguez, who was one of the victims, is shown a photo lineup, and he is not able to identify anybody. Now, Michael Keatley's picture was part of that photo lineup, and he's like, nope, I don't see anybody. However, on the morning of the 26th, he calls Detective Lugo back, and he says, hey, I've got a picture here of the murderer. I found him. So Detective Lugo goes out, and Jose Rodriguez is there, and what's the other guy's name? Juan Hernandez is there. So Juan says, this is an email that I got, and on this email, when it's shown in court, it says forward, 11 times. Forward. So this thing was being forwarded all over the community. Oh my God, now we got tornado sirens. It goes off every day at noon, so don't worry. Or maybe you didn't hear it. I'm hearing it. So Detective Lugo says, guys, please don't show these photos don't show this photograph to anybody else, to any more of the victims, please, because he doesn't want them tainted. And so he says, don't forward it anywhere. And they're like, this is the ice cream man. And this is the same photograph in the text message that was on the, you know, the fundraising jars after the robbery of the ice cream man. You know, he had his picture and they were raising funds. And this is the picture that's going around in this text message. It's not a particularly good picture of Michael Keatley. Another interview that took place by Detective Lugo was this Stacy Rogan, who was Michael Keatley's ex-girlfriend, and she was actually in the hospital at the time that they interviewed her, but for an ankle injury, nothing related to the murders. But she testified that Michael Keatley was obsessed with finding this guy named Creeper. Now, another thing that Detective Lugo did was he went out to the home of Omar Bailon. I'm going to sneeze. He went out to the home of Omar Bailon, and he interviews Omar Bailon and Omar Bailon's girlfriend. And the reason he did that is because he found out that this was the guy that goes by the name of Creeper. And of course, Omar denies being part of any gang. No, not associated with any gang. And the thing that, this came out on cross-examination. This detective never, even though he had previously to getting into the homicide division, had been in the gang division. At this point, he doesn't call any of the gang detectives and say, hey, tell me about this Omar Bailon. Tell me about Creeper. Doesn't do it. No. Doesn't call the gang detectives and say, do you know any of these guys that were shot? Never does it. Might have been a good thing to do based on some other stuff we learned later on during this testimony. So, there was an interview with Daniel Beltran that occurred in the hospital on, I'm trying to see the date, on the 27th of November. The murders occurred on the 25th. Now, this photo, they call him photo pack, was shown to Daniel Beltran, and he was also not able to identify any of the individuals in that photo pack as being the murder, including a photo of Michael Keatley. Now, later on, there's a there's a conversation that goes on between a confrontation, I should say, versus a conversation between the defense attorney and the detective about how to properly do a photo lineup. So apparently at that time, Hillsborough County was trying to be very progressive in the way that they did photo lineups. And this was based on, and Detective Lugo agreed with this, the large amount of misidentifications that occurred during these lineups, and that there's innocent people sitting in jail based on these lineups that are just wrong, that people were misidentified. So in order to not to do that, Hillsborough County put out a standard operating procedure that says you must do it, your photo lineup this way. And one of the ways they have you do it is that they tell the detectives they have to, read this thing to the person you're giving the photo lineup to. But the photo lineup, first of all, you have to assemble 6 pictures. The picture of your suspect, and then the other 5 pictures have to resemble the suspect. If your suspect's black, you need to have 6 black men. If your suspect's Hispanic, you should have 6 Hispanic men. If your suspect has a goatee, you need to have 6 goatees. They have to have some similar features to them. So you have to take those 6 photographs that you want to use in your lineup to your supervisor. Your supervisor has to look at them and approve them. This was not done in this case. No one approved these 6 photos. You also have to, once they're approved, someone has to administer the photo lineup that's not connected with the investigation. Now, in the case of Daniel Beltran, the interview that took place with Daniel Beltran, the photo pack was done by somebody that had no knowledge of the case. But in the case of Gonzalo Guerrero, Detective Lugo did the photo lineup with him. And that's Gonzalo Guerrero, or whatever his last name is. He's the one that sat on the stand and said, yes, I was in my hospital bed. I identified number 3 as the suspect, the murderer, and I'm 2,000% sure that this is him. Yeah. Okay, so they were not following standard operating procedure. And Detective Lugo actually had the nerve to say, it's just a recommendation that you follow these. You don't have to follow these. They're just asking you, can you follow these? What? Because you have to, everything's different based on the situation. And I don't think so. It says you must. You must do this. Not you shall, you must. But he was just taking it as a suggestion of how to do a photo lineup. Anyway. So he also did the interview of Michael Keatley the night that Michael Keatley was pulled over for a traffic stop. Now, I think I went over this before. Michael Keatley, they were surveilling. Detective Lugo gets this specialized team to sit out and surveil his house, and then when he leaves his house, he's speeding. He's going like 5 miles over the speed limit, and they stop him, make a traffic stop, and they take him down to District 4 where Detective Lugo interviews him. Now, then Detective Lugo gets a search warrant for Michael Keatley's house, and Michael Keatley's house was searched and his property was searched, and they did not find a Glock 45 caliber weapon. That was the murder weapon, a Glock 45 caliber. That's what they were looking for. Also, what was not found was a black t-shirt with the word sheriff on it. Not found. Now, he also interviewed Wesley Smith. I'm trying to see how he figured out. Oh, the reason he got so he interviewed Wesley Smith next, or at some point he interviews Wesley Smith, and the reason he learned about Wesley Smith is they got the phone records of Michael Keatley, and the first person that Michael Keatley talks to the morning of the murders, around 7:30, the murders occurred about 2:22. The first person that he talks to is this Wesley Smith. So Detective Lugo goes out and interviews Wesley Smith and Wesley Smith's wife, and they don't really have a whole lot of information. They went out there, they went shooting, and then it's the next day. Remember I told you he told Wesley, if you remember anything, give me a call. And so Wesley remembers that he's got these shell casings in a Victoria's Secret bag. Here's a picture of the bag. And that his wife collected. So Lugo goes out and he collects the shell casings. Now, there was a lot of other shell casings in that bag, but he sends the 45 shell casings that he finds that were in that bag to FDLE for comparison. Then later on, he does the interview with Gonzalo Guevara, and he actually goes to see Gonzalo Guerrero several times while he's in the ICU, and decides on this first few times that he does go out to interview him, that he's too under the influence of medication to do an interview. So it's not till like his 3rd or 4th visit to see Gonzalo that he actually is able to do an interview with Gonzalo. Now, one of the things the defense points out is, when you arrived on the murder scene, It was dark. Yes, he admits it was very, very dark. There was no street lights. It was very dark, and they had to add additional lighting. So he asked the guy, did you have anybody do a diagram of the crime scene? Like, how far is it from the porch to the vehicles that were there? How big is the porch? Where was everybody on the porch? He did not. That was never done. He doesn't know who was sitting in what chair. He doesn't know where they were placed when this whole thing started. He doesn't know what any of the measurements were, never got any of that. Nor did he ever sit on that porch or have anybody sit on that porch under the lighting as it was when he arrived to see, what can you see in this darkness. Never did that. I'd be curious. Like, what did you, I'd probably want to go sit down in that chair and see what I could see. And because the victim or the murderer's vehicle was out in the street, and he gets out of that vehicle and walks towards the house, but we don't know what the distance is because that was never measured. There was never any drugs, beer, drug paraphernalia, cocaine, marijuana. None of that was collected from this crime scene. So we don't know what happened. There was a confrontation between the defense attorney and the Detective Lugo about what transpired prior to that 911 call. And the judge did not allow him to go into it. There was, they did a sidebar, and when they came back from the sidebar, it was kind of dropped. But it led me to believe that these guys were making phone calls to other people before they called 911, and they may have been doing something with the drugs. But so nobody really knows how much time passed between when the murders occurred and when 911 was called at 2:22 a.m. He does admit, Detective Lugo did admit that because of the neighborhood, when he got there at 4:30 a.m., he thought, oh, this is probably gang related because of the neighborhood. And then we find out that Detective Lugo was aware that that very same house had been shot up the previous morning, the day before. No, I'm sorry, 2 weeks before. 2 weeks before, that very same house had been shot up in a drive-by shooting. Now, there was a lot of drama in the courtroom over this testimony. Were they going to let the jury hear this? Was there a motion in limine about this? What? and the judge stands up and he dismisses the jurors. He says, he lets them have a break. And then he says, this is the first time I am hearing this. And this is the judge that was on the prior case. He goes, I have never heard before that there was a drive-by shooting at this exact same location 2 weeks prior to the murders. Why have I never heard this before? And the prosecution is saying because there was a motion in limine to keep it out. The previous judge had said this is not coming in. And he says, well, I want to see this. I want to see the ruling. Well, they couldn't find the ruling. Well, they found the ruling. And then they found, after a while, this went on for a while, them searching for the motion and the ruling. They finally found that there was a motion in limine related to a particular witness about what this particular witness could talk about or not talk about. So the prior judge had ruled that as it relates to this witness, because and this was what the order said, because he had no knowledge of this prior shooting, the drive-by shooting, that he couldn't talk about it. But that didn't preclude anyone else from talking about it. So the current judge, back to present day, after a lot of back and forth, says, I'm going to let this in. You can, it's relevant. Maybe the prior judge said it wasn't relevant through that guy because you couldn't get it in through that witness, but I don't see why it can't come in through another witness. And Detective Lugo did know about this drive-by shooting at this address, this same address, 2 weeks prior to that. What? Then we also find out that morning there was a robbery that involved a guy with a green van. And one of the witnesses had described the murderer as being in a green van. I'm like, what? Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So, wow. And the biggest question that the defense attorneys had of Detective Lugo was, why didn't you follow up on this? Why didn't you call out the gang detectives? Follow up. Did you even look into the drive-by shooting? He's like, no. And he says, the reason I did it is because this case developed very rapidly, very rapidly. We had a suspect within hours, and so we did not follow up on the prior shooting. Okay. Then he found out that Jose Rodriguez had lied to him during his interview. Rodriguez had told Detective Lugo that he didn't know Creeper, but it turns out he did know Creeper, so he had lied to him. Yeah. Try to see what else I haven't talked about yet. It's such interesting testimony. Detective Lugo did admit that morning that he assumed that these guys were not being forthcoming. He just didn't think that these people that he was interviewing were being forthcoming, that something was being held back. Oh, the other thing about that morning robbery was that the guy had a pump-action rifle. Now, in order to fire a pump-action rifle, you have to use two hands, because you've got to do this. You're holding the rifle, and then you have to take your other hand and do this to pump it to get... I know, that's what she said. Stop. Okay. To get it to fire. The other thing Detective Lugo had to admit to was during his interview of Michael Keatley that he saw that Michael Keatley had a disabled hand. Never asked him about it. Never asked him if he could shoot a pump action. Didn't ask him what his disability was or what was wrong with his hand. Didn't ask him. Didn't go into it with Michael Keatley. Crazy. And then another thing that was pointed out by the defense through Detective Lugo is after the murders, that there's two ways into this neighborhood, and one way involves this US 41 highway. So he sent officers to the racetrack there, where a lot of people stop and hang out. They get their gas and they can get their Slurpee or whatever. So he sent officers to the racetrack to collect any video that the racetrack might have. The officers come back with video for the daytime and not the nighttime. So he said, did you send them back to get the nighttime? He goes, no, I never did. No, never sent them back. What? Okay. The other thing was that when Jose Rodriguez called Detective Lugo and said, here's the murderer, he never mentioned to Detective Lugo that, he knew him as the ice cream man, that he had bought ice cream from him many times. Ice cream and nachos he would buy from Michael Keatley. He told Detective Keatley, no, I don't know this guy. Never seen him before. Yeah. Lying. So, interesting. So with regard to that text message that was going around and around the neighborhood, it says forwarded 11 times on the email, not a text message, on the email. This detective never investigated where this email originated or who got the email. Never, who was it forwarded to? Never investigated that. When he asked Juan Hernandez, listen, who gave you this email? Where did you get this from? Juan Hernandez wouldn't tell him. No. So he never subpoenaed to find out. He never issued a subpoena to find out where this email had gone, where it had come from, and he could have gotten that information. Just didn't think to do it. Interesting, huh? All right. Sorry, it was kind of discombobulated there. Like I said, or maybe I don't know. I'm in pain. Wait for the flex rule to kick in. I should have waited for the flex rule to kick in before I did the video. Let's go to the crime calendar for the day, guys. All right, part 1 of the Hart family crash. Okay, I don't believe I've heard of this one. So let's see. There are how many parts here? Oh my gosh, this one's going to go all week. All right. The hug felt around the world. Part 1. In 2014, in the wake of the police shooting of 18-year-old Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, a photo of 12-year-old Devonte Hart at a Portland, Oregon protest made headlines. The photo showed Devonte, who had won his free hugs sign to the protest. The photo showed Devonte, who had worn his free hugs sign to the protest, in an embrace with a Portland police officer, tears running down Devonte's face. The photo went viral, dubbed "The Hug Felt Around the World." Some found the image heartwarming, others felt the image of a young black boy hugging a white policeman in full riot gear was an oversimplification of the rising racial unrest in the country. I don't remember that photo. I'm going to see if I can find it. If I can find it, I'll attach it here and let you guys see it. Devonte's moms, Jen and Sarah Hart, were overwhelmed by the response the photo received. Along with the reporters waiting outside their house, death threats began arriving, of course. Some people hurled anti-gay sentiments at the women, while others insulted their large multiracial family. The women decided to lay low with their 6 adopted children, though they eventually resumed going to protests and events and posting happy family photos on social media. 4 years later, their deaths would make headlines. What? Oh my God. How did I not hear about this? Oh, tune in tomorrow. Oh my gosh. Wow. All right. Wow. I'll look for that photo for you. All right, guys, that's the show for today. I hope you enjoyed the content. Have a wonderful Monday. Mine is off to a bang-up start. Yeah, I'm all over the place with this video, but stick with it, guys. This case is... It's been all over the place. And I got to tell you, after the cross-examination of Detective Lugo, I am not so sure that this guy is the murderer. I really am not. I think there might have been a rush to judgment here, or at least it was not thoroughly investigated that these could be gang-related murders. They had a drive-by shooting 2 weeks prior to this. How did that investigation end? We don't know. The detective doesn't know. He never bothered to find out. All right. See you guys tomorrow in Crafting and Crime Daily.